We all have an internal voice that questions why we are here, why we struggle, and what any of it actually means. For thousands of years, the ancient Hindu texts known as the Puranas have addressed those questions as repositories of psychological wisdom, distinct from religious dogma. By mapping out cosmic narratives of world-ending floods and celestial wars, the authors encoded fundamental truths about the human condition. Understanding the birth of our own consciousness requires looking at how these texts explain the genesis of the universe itself. The ancient Puranic system of creation rests on three fundamental pillars. Brahma creates, Vishnu preserves, and Shiva transforms. This interaction of primordial elements doesn't stop at the edges of the galaxy. It dictates the architecture of the human mind. This leads us to the concept of Maya, or illusion. Sage Narada experiences an entire lifetime, finding a wife, building a home, raising his children, only to wake up and realize it was a reality hijacked by his own perception. As the universe fills with life, we naturally attach ourselves to this physical world, often forgetting our infinite nature in the process. The act of creation inherently breeds this attachment. By participating in the material world, the human mind becomes hardwired for suffering. This suffering leads directly to conflict. But the most brutal wars depicted in these texts take place inside the human mind, far from physical battlefields. This map reveals a moral gray zone in the conflict phase, where divine beings often act with vanity and demons display profound virtue. This distinction is explored through the concepts of Jaya and Vijaya. Vijaya is the conquering of external forces, while Jaya is the task of conquering one's own ego. Slaying demons achieves nothing if a king cannot control his own impulses. Without internal mastery, the ego remains the primary adversary. The monsters and deities of mythology are personifications of these two forces, ego and dharma, warring inside us daily. The epic story of the churning of the cosmic ocean serves as a foundational metaphor for human ambition. When the gods and demons collaborate to churn the waters, the friction produces the nectar of immortality, but it also releases a concentrated, world-destroying poison. We experience this in our daily lives. The relentless pursuit of status yields comfortable rewards, but it simultaneously generates immense stress and toxic consequences. This imbalance leads to the decline phase. The texts detail stories of powerful kings who are forced to choose between worldly sensuality and moral duty, only to watch their kingdoms fall. This illustrates the law of impermanence. Every earthly boon, royal title, and sweeping empire eventually decays. Our refusal to accept that impermanence, our insistence on clinging to temporary success, drives the endless cycle of decline and pain. This relentless cycle of karma and conflict eventually pushes consciousness to a breaking point, necessitating a withdrawal into the self. In his central revelation to the warrior Arjuna, Krishna explains that the purpose of the battle was never to prove oneself mightier than others. True deity requires acting as an instrument of a higher will, carrying out responsibilities meticulously without attachment to the personal outcome. Realizing the true self successfully separates our eternal identity from the demands of a fragile, temporary ego. The final victory is paradoxical. It requires surrendering the illusion of control to achieve total self-mastery. This diagram maps out the Puranic blueprint for escaping suffering, resolving it into a practical psychological equation. An aware mind combined with right action forms the basis of Dharma. Subtracting ego and attachment from the result completes the formula for peace and liberation. The texts define moksha as a grounded, achievable state of psychological freedom experienced here on earth, rather than a mystical afterlife. These tales reflect the internal mechanics of our choices, mapping the path toward our own transformation.